Get out of my way, crocodile!
Walt, please. I'm trying to focus. Taxes are due again.
Sorry. I just got carried away. You suck, loser.
Walt, volume.
Sorry. It won't happen again. Yeah, that's right. Get out of town, freak.
Walt, would you calm down? This is getting ridiculous. It is just a game. You need to keep your cool, especially if you're going to play this in the living area.
I know. I just want to be the best, and this game is so hard. But I'm going to beat it soon. You mark my words. I'm figuring them out.
Walt, do you think you might have the wrong mentality for Animal Crossing? I've seen you play video games. I've never seen you play Animal Crossing, but I actually imagine it very much like that.
No. Maybe. It's a possibility. I don't know. I haven't played it before.
You just are a very animated guy. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You're just very animated.
I get quite, but like when I play Magic, when I play games, I get quite sort of stationary, I would think. Like
when you're in the tank, you do. But when you're comfortable, you're very animated.
That's true.
Like when you're playing Magic and like you know what your lines are, you don't have to think about it, or the board state's easy to understand. You are like basically turn 1 to 4. You're very animated and bubbly.
And then the game gets serious, and so do I.
Yeah. The brow is furrowed.
That's it. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's the GCP, brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast, where there are only 10 months of the year. So October is finally 8th. I'm your host, Walt.
But it feels so happy to finally make sense in that slot. Hello, Commander players. I'm the kind of G the little homies want to be like, on my knees in the night saying prayers in the streetlight. James.
I'm assuming that's lyrics.
It's Coolio.
Coolio?
It's Gangster's Paradise.
Oh, Gangster's
Paradise.
Hell
I'm the kind of G the little homies want to be like.
Hell yeah.
Great song.
Have you heard Amish Paradise?
The Weird Al version.
So good.
Living in an Amish paradise. Yeah, awesome.
We've got a transmission that we've got to get to at some point, but before that, don't forget, we have a Patreon. You may be remembering that last week we had the first monthly meteor visit us.
We finally know what's going on, and it's a big old satellite that swings around Earth every month.
Yep.
We're going to beam the news of Commander to it every single month in video form, which is really cool.
Very exciting. But if you support us on Patreon, or if you now join as a supporter on Patreon, you can get access to the extended, unedited version of that video. So if you want to see the kind of hijinks me and James get up to, and we're trying not to laugh and trying to get it working. Then
now we've done it once. We can actually tell you what it's going to be like. Firstly, you'll get all the bloopers. Yes. So all of our mistakes you will see on camera, which is even better.
Yeah.
You will also get some like extra insight and some, because there are bits of conversation that end up on the cutting room floor. We're trying to keep the monthly Meteor news podcasts to around 30 minutes. That's our goal.
I know we went a bit over this time, but probably we're going to try and hit that 30 minutes next time.
So there is a lot that, because, we were recording for about an hour and a half. So there's a lot that ends up on the cutting room floor, and there's a lot of insights. Like, for example, I won't talk too much about it because that's the Patreon exclusive, but something that we didn't discuss at all in Duskmorn was the fact that Arch Enemy's returning. And that's like a whole discussion point.
I didn't even know about that.
I know. So maybe like in the future, Patreons will get like an extra little bit of conversation about those kind of topics that we don't have time to talk about in the main video. Yeah,
it's definitely something exciting you're going to want to check out. So over on patreon.com/Get Commanded Podcast.
Yes.
Get Commanded Podcast. The only place where Get Commanded Podcast. Everywhere else we're just Get Commanded. On Patreon, we Get Commanded Podcast. But you'll want to check it out. There's lots of other benefits on offer. You can play with us once a month, or even request an episode topic foreshadowing. Anyway.
So subtle.
We have an incoming transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
High mana curves, magnificent single card effects, and decisions dictated by fun. All players can derive great enjoyment by emulating Timmy or Tammy.
The two player archetypes
Yeah.
we're going to dive into.
Psychographic profiles, I believe, is what it describes as.
That
if I'm not
sounds so
mistaken.
far above our pay grade to be talking about.
Look, I think maybe for today, the Space Commanders will allow us to talk about these kinds of things. But yes, I have been informed that this transmission comes to us from our patron, Wizard Down Under, who supports us as a Space Commander and so gets to be a Space Commander sometimes.
And gets to recommend podcast episode ideas like this.
Yeah. So, it sounds like we're talking about Timmy/Tammy, which some of you will know about for sure. If you don't, we're definitely going to go into who that person is and what they mean and what they're about. But we're looking at how you can emulate Timmy or Tammy. That's
to embody the psychograph.
Yeah. You want to get a bit psychographic up in here? For some extra fun in your games. Extra enjoyment. Derive great enjoyment is what they said.
I think Timmys and Tammys are like probably one of the easiest psychographs to identify in a game of Commander. It's very easy to point them out. But look, I would say as well, if you know what a Timmy and Tammy is already and you're like, nope, that's not me, I would actually stick around for this episode because I think there is going to be some lessons that us other players, because I'm not a Timmy,
No.
I think I'm more of a Johnny kind of player.
Yep.
Maybe a bit of a Spike moving into that area, but even if you're not a Timmy, I think there's going to be some really fundamental things that all of us can put into our games because, Timmys just want to have fun. And I think that's something we're all, like you said at the start of every episode, we're out to have better games of Commander. And better games means having more fun.
Exactly.
These guys are always out to have fun.
They're always having the most fun. It's a huge thing. I think even if you are a Timmy as well, we're going to talk about ways to be like Timmy and moderate your Timminess maybe a bit as well. So if you're a Timmy, stick around. If you're not a Timmy, stick around. Shocker, this episode's for everyone.
It's almost like we made it for a wide audience catchment.
Oh my word. What a crazy, crazy world we live in.
Clever content creators is what we are.
Anyway, who are Timmy/Tammy? It's the same person, by the way. Timmy is the sort of more masc name. Tammy is the more femme name. They use those interchangeably now.
Yep.
When they were first introduced, it was just Timmy, so we'll probably just be using the word Timmy for the rest of this episode. But it's gender neutral.
Yay for gender neutrality and gender options.
Yes.
Woo!
Thankfully, some of the other terms like Spike are gender neutral. Spike is everybody.
Spike is non-binary to me.
Like canonically,
the character Spike is non-binary.
When you look at the art, I can see it.
They've got that kind of like
got a bit of NB energy
hair and that like a kind of half unzipped hoodie. That gives me strong NB energy.
Yeah. Anyway, Timmy and Tammy are not NB that we know of, but they could be. So look, since at least 2013, Mark Rosewater and the team at Research and Development at Wizards of the Coast have divided players into three of these, quote, psychographic categories. I'm just going to quote Mark Rosewater in his initial article talking about this. This is from 2013. He said, after numerous years, we've come to the conclusion that there are three basic types of Magic players. The fancy term for these categories is psychographic profiles. Haha.
Really fancy.
A psychographic profile separates players into categories based on their psychological makeup. What motivates that player to play? What kind of cards do they like? What kinds of things encourage that player to keep on playing?
Now, I know I make jokes about like the whole psychographic like assessment of players being like a joke, but I actually have a little bit of insight for this. There is like a real reason why Wizards of the Coast would want to do this for their player base. Because shocking absolutely no one, Wizards of the Coast is actually a company, and they need to understand their customers in order to sell to them.
Yeah.
So I imagine there are like product pitch meetings where they're like, okay, how are you selling this product to a Timmy? How are you selling this to Johnny? How are you selling this to Spike?
Yeah.
And that because for those that don't know, I'm a marketing nerd. That's what I did my degree in. that is like a huge way you can build products and analyze it. And that's a really important thing to do when you're thinking about your customer base, is basically give them psychographic demographics.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, how does this person think about this product? Just a bit of insight into why they might want to do this internally and as a bit of a joke externally with the customer base.
Yeah, and it's really important to personify them, right? Like when we spoke about the Color Philosophy series, for instance, we talked about how Wizards of the Coast actually say, would white do this? Like white is a person. Would blue enjoy this thing? Does black act in this way? They actually ask themselves these questions because it's much easier to imagine a person in the room and going, okay, yeah, Timmy's in the room. Timmy looks at Three Tree City from Bloomburrow. Does Timmy get excited by having 10 more mana than he should? Absolutely, Timmy does.
Yeah.
This is a Timmy card.
I mean, like, we do it with our listeners. Like, this is really like peeking behind the curtain and getting super meta. When we're looking at like commands from the Space Commanders, we're like, okay, when we respond to this, is potentially Birdie going to enjoy this? Is Crazy Logic going to like this?
Yeah.
What about the Nick in our Discord? What about the Flutters
Benjamin.
or the Benjamin?
Yeah.
Like, you guys are all such different types of players, and in our heads, we've kind of categorized our listener base into a few different demographics. And some episodes we will highlight at the top of our, like, episode email that we send to each other is like, this is for category B of our audience, that kind of thing.
It's important that you know who you're making the thing for and you sort of have them in mind. And so it makes a lot of sense that Wizards have done this. I have one more quote here, which is what Mark Rosewater has said specifically of Timmy, noting that this was before they introduced Tammy, so he's just using the word Timmy here, but you can imagine Tammy being used in this context as well. Mark Rosewater said, Timmy wants to experience something. Timmy plays Magic because he enjoys the feeling he gets when he plays. What that feeling is will vary from Timmy to Timmy, but what all Timmys have in common is that they enjoy the visceral experience of playing.
Yeah, that sums it up really well for me.
Yeah, and this is exactly, I think, what the Space Commanders were getting at. You said before, Timmys have the most fun. It's that, right? It's the visceral experience of being in the game and playing in the game of Magic that gives the enjoyment. Where, maybe we'll look into this at a future time, but people like the Johnnies and the Spikes.
Oh, you're saying we might look into them later?
Maybe.
I think this episode might potentially come a little miniseries.
Maybe. But yes, if you're in one of those other categories, your enjoyment is kind of sometimes a bit more narrow, where it's like you can imagine a game or a board state that might cause a Spike to stop having fun, or might cause a Johnny to stop having fun. And yes, this can happen to Timmy, but because Timmy derives so much of their enjoyment from just being in the game, the visceral experience of playing, it's much harder to not have fun as a Timmy.
I mean, we'll get into this as well, but like, I think the way Timmy's approach their deck building, it's like, it's just like, we'll talk, because I mean, the Space Commanders alluded to it, right? Big mana curves, big spells, big moments in games.
Yeah.
They build their decks to have multiple of those.
Yes.
So if one doesn't work, they almost get excited because they're like, oh, now I get to fire off this second one that I have in hand.
They do.
One dinosaur, two dinosaur.
I would say that probably the inverse of that, though, is the Timmy experience of tapping out to play an 8-drop, and the blue player just casts a counter spell for 2 mana.
Yeah, the Timmy response to that is flipping a table.
Yeah.
It's like, nope.
I vividly remember the day I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old and I was playing with my brother and we used a counter spell for the first time. And I was like, oh, I must just go back to my hand. And Tom was like, no, I think it goes into your graveyard. And I was like, that can't be right.
For 2 mana?
That's rubbish, dude. And then we looked it up and this is what happened. And we both looked at each other and we were like, what the hell,
Counter spells are broken.
What the hell is this? This is nonsense.
And then you played against me when you got back into Magic. What a fun experience you've had.
Stuck in it. No, look, we can all learn to be a bit more like Timmy. We're going to give you 3 different ways that you can be like Timmy. Shocker, they're in the command. The Space Commanders told us exactly what they are. You should try at least one of these, I think, to broaden your horizons. But yes, Timmys love big things, like big mana curves. The Space Commander specifically said this. They said high mana curves are a fun thing you can do.
I'd like you to mentally, listeners, just have the song I like 'em big. I like 'em chunky.
That's a Madagascar 2 reference for all of you.
Moto coming out of the little swamp thing
most jacked hippo ever.
Yeah, most handsome hippo ever. I am just a furry. But you know what I mean? Jesus.
He's once again
really
realized
took me out.
in real time that that's what he is.
Oh, well, we had comments on the
I
monthly
know.
media channel just being like, yeah,
Yes,
James,
in
if
answer to
you
your
are
question.
attracted to the otter version of Raoul,
You are a fairy. Welcome to the fold. No.
I'm not a furry, to
no.
be clear. Not.
Let's not talk about that.
No, let's go on. Big curves, big mana curves.
Big mana curves. So Timmys love big spells. So yeah, if you want to build a deck that's a bit Timmy-ish, you might end up with just more high mana value spells than you usually play.
I think we've been, like, something that we've done a lot on this podcast is promote lowering mana curves.
Yeah.
We are often saying, okay, instead of playing, all of this ramp that you're playing, why don't you just take out the 5/8 drops that are in your deck?
Yeah.
And then you might be able to play some of the cards in your hand in the early game.
Yes.
So
I think we do both still stand by that advice that, like, in terms of improving the consistency of your enjoyment of a deck, lowering the curve is still a valid way of doing that.
and it makes it more consistent. We're not backtracking because we're now talking about Timmys.
No.
It's like we still agree with this. But yeah, Timmys kind of approach this in maybe a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think that Timmy's just kind of prioritize the enjoyment of those big spells, and so they put a bunch of them in there in the deck. And look, like me and James in general play low curves in our decks, but sometimes we just want to build a deck that does big stupid nonsense. I love my Averna, the Chaos Bloom deck.
The average mana value in that deck is
It's like
ridiculous.
4.2 or something absolutely silly. Mostly to support the fact that its Secret Commander is Emoti, Celebrate a Bounty, so I have to cast 6 mana spells to cascade with Emoti. But like I love the fact that yes, there's a bunch of like ramp in here to make it work, but you just get to slam big fatties half the time. Like, it is so much fun to play Apex Devastator. Is that the card? The one that cascades 4 times?
Cascade. Yeah.
That card is so fun. You can't feel bad about that card.
I see your inner Timmy coming out when you put that on the stack for sure.
I think this is probably the Timmiest of my decks, if I had to say. But yeah, I
think that's the most Timmy card you play. Apex Devastator. That is like such a quintessential Timmy card.
Yeah.
It's a 10-drop, right?
It is a 10-drop.
10 mana.
They designed that card for Timmy.
Yeah, 100%
for sure.
They did. Look at the art of it. It's this huge, it's like multi-headed
It's a
Hydra
4-headed
thing,
Hydra. Yeah. It's
ridiculous.
It's amazing. But yeah, I love sometimes sitting down with the deck and going, I'm going to ramp a bunch and then I'm just going to cast big spells until my big spells become big enough to smack my opponents in the head. It's just fun.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the decks that you play the least. I would argue this is definitely a deck that you don't reach for a lot.
No.
But we played it the other night. Like you pulled it out the other night at a what game was it?
It was a Patreon game.
It was a Patreon game. That's right. With Bottomless. Yeah, heck yeah. And that was really cool to see you play that deck because you were just giggling. You were like, oh, well, this is kind of silly. Sorry, guys. Because you hit, like, I remember you cascaded for 5 and then you hit another cascade spell and you were like, what, we're doing it again. And it was like this fun kind of like, you didn't know what was happening.
No.
And it was just fun to watch.
Yeah. And you just get more and more creatures. It's like, yep, this creature comes with 2 more.
And also, Averna being in your command zone in that deck, that's such a Timmy commander because, like, it helps you ramp into the bigger spells.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
It is just perpetually. It's like a snowball rolling down a mountain. It's just like gradually picking up.
I have more ramp, which lets me cast big spells, which gets me more ramp, which gets me cast bigger spells. Big. I win.
Yeah.
I love that deck. It's so much fun.
I do too. I think my Timmiest of decks, and it's finally received the love and attention it's so long overdue for deserving. My Zaxara deck.
Oh, Zaxara the Exemplary. This is the Sultai.
Yeah.
I tap some mana. Who cares about that?
Well, I mean, some people care about it because it can go infinite.
But your deck does not go infinite. But yes, X-Spells, right?
Yes.
You make big Hydras.
Yeah, the deck is now on Moxfield. This has been a long run. If you're a long-running fan of the podcast,
every stats episode
is excluding my Zaxara deck.
It's like, it's like the beginning of any like bit of scientific research, right? You have to be like, here's my limitations. And it's like, my limitation is I can't get my hands on every card in all of James's decks because he refuses to put this one on Moxfield.
But now it's there, so you can have a look at it if you like. But this is my it's called on Moxfield X Gon Give It To You. And I think that, I've just got 90s hip hop playing in my head when I think about Timmys, don't I? I like them big. It's Coolio in the game. And then I've got Exhibit coming in with X Gon Give It To You.
X Gon Deliver To You.
But yeah, this is my X type deck. So pretty much so many spells with X in its mana cost, because Zaxara, when you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, you make a 0/0 Hydra and put X counters on it, where X was the X mana value of that spell.
Yeah, so if you cast a Pull from Tomorrow and you pay 5 blue, so X is equal to 5, draw 5 cards, discard a card, Zaxara makes you effectively a 5/5 Hydra. It's a 0/0 with 5 counters on it, which can matter later.
Yes.
With stuff like Biomass Mutation, for instance.
Well, Biomass Mutation is instant. Creatures gain base power and toughness X, which is the mana value you pay into it. So then it just boosts them all.
Yep.
And then I also have my favorite card in the deck is Herald of the Secret Streams.
Which just basically says, my Hydras are unblockable.
Yeah. Anything with a +1 counter on it can't be blocked, which is kind of just stupid. For 4 mana, that card is weirdly cheap for how powerful it can be.
But this is very Timmy coded, this deck, right? It's the feeling, like the other day when you were playing it, you did the Cabal Coffers Urborg thing. I think you even untapped Urborg.
I did,
untapped Cabal Coffers and tapped it again. You had like 30 mana in your pool, and you were thinking about all these different like plays you were going to make, and then you were like, oh no, I can draw my deck, and I know I have a Torment of Hellfire in here. And then you cast Torment of Hellfire with X equal to 18 or something silly.
It was definitely just I just need to find the spell to tap out on.
I just windmill slam this win con with as much mana as I can find. Like, there's nothing more Timmy than that to me.
No, I feel like my deck, like, there is a lot of instant speed interaction, and there's a couple of like X cost counter spells in the deck, which is more, more control-y, not very Timmy. But 90% of the time, what that deck is trying to do is untap on its turn, have a bunch of mana, and then go, well, fuck it. Big spell. And just like hope that big amount of value, like Villainous Wealth is like such a Timmy card for me in that deck. Like Villainous Wealth is the X and then green, blue, black, where you exile the top X cards of someone's library and you can play for free any number of them with mana value X or less.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, this is exile your top 10, I'll cast everything for free.
Sometimes it whiffs. Sometimes it whiffs.
Happen.
It can happen, but like most of the time it doesn't. Because you target the opponent with the big stuff, put a bunch of mana into it, and once you do that kind of thing, it's like, well, I might not win right here, right now, but surely the result of me just going all in on this strategy will pay off.
It's going all in, isn't it? That's the really Timmy thing, right? It's just going like, no, I'm just going to go all in on this one thing.
It's definitely the scene where Daniel Craig just goes push, and he just pushes all the chips into the table. Just goes all in, Lashif. Let's see what you've got, Mads Mikkelsen.
Show me what you got. Look, I think if we were to give some advice on how to make this high mana value curve work, we've sort of already mentioned it a couple of times. You need lots of ramp is the big thing.
Tons.
But like, if you have it, you can just, your deck can basically function in exactly the same way that we recommend your decks function at a lower mana curve with less ramp. You can do the complete inverse of this and still work, which is you'll have lots of ramp and a high mana value curve. You'll be still fine, right?
Especially if your ramp is all on like the below, because there are ramp pieces that are like 6 mana. There is like Coveted Jewel, and there's
Boundless Realms for 7.
Yeah, there's also stuff like Hedron Archive and stuff like that, like higher mana value ramp. But as long as most of your ramp kind of sits within the 4 mana and under slot,
and ideally under, right? 2 and 3 mana ramp.
2 and 3
usually where it's at.
Especially if you're in green, we're talking about your Cultivates, your Kodama's Reaches, your Far Seeks, your Nature's Law, 3 visits, that kind of stuff.
Even Rampant Growth is totally serviceable most of the time.
Yeah, 100%. Just to give you that, like, on turn 2, I'm doing getting ahead. On turn 3, I'm still getting ahead. On turn 4, now I'm casting a spell for like 7 mana instead of 4 mana. So like, as long as you're ramping on those turns, it can be a totally serviceable to have your average mana value be like 4+.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think, like, to put it in perspective, my Averna deck has 15 pieces of ramp in it, plus again, as you said, my commander literally ramps me every time I cascade.
True, so
assuming
that's
I hit
probably, I'd count that as like another 2 pieces of ramp in the command zone.
If not, maybe more like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Like most of the time, Averna's on the board.
Yep.
And your Zaxara deck, I had a look. Ha!
You can access the stats
I could finally do it.
How many pieces did I tag?
20.
Yeah.
Got 20 pieces of ramp in that deck.
Interestingly, I obviously didn't tag Zaxara, but Zaxara is also
That's
ramp.
true.
So 21.
There you
pieces
go.
of ramp in the deck.
And it, again, similar to Averna, you could count Zaxara as more than a card because you have
I've always
access to
got
it so much
access to
of the
it.
time.
Yeah.
It's more like a 23, 24 piece of ramp deck.
I think that as long as you are like mulliganing for the ramp in your opening hand,
You still need to have plays in your opening hand, right?
That's something that I think new players get really distracted by when playing a Timmy style deck. Like new players will go, oh, I'm going to play the Gishath deck. I've got big dinosaurs and all this kind of stuff in hand. They get their opening hand. They're like, wow, Zatalpa, Zakama, Apex Devastate, all this stuff. Wow, I'm going to love this hand. And they've got 2 lands and no 2 mana spells.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, make sure when you're mulliganing for a Timmy deck, it is so important to find ramp in your opening hand.
Yeah, you can have, maybe 1 or even 2 of those high mana value 6 and above spells in your opening hand. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you need the rest of that hand to be playable stuff. Whether it's 3, 4 lands or whether it's, ideally ramp is ramp. Really important.
When I'm playing Zaxara, I will basically mulligan any hand that doesn't have ramp in it.
Yeah, I think the only time I would not do that in my Averna deck is like if I can cast Averna on 3 and then Cascade on turn 4.
Because that's
basically
you.
a ramp
Yeah.
spell. But yeah, if I can't get Averna out and I don't have ramp, I'm like, this hand is useless to me.
Yeah, well, Zaxara's 4 mana and also 3 colored pips and 1. It's like, I could do the same thing because Zaxara comes in and then taps for 2 mana, but I really, for that deck, because I know all my X spells, like if X is equal to 2, it's not doing much.
Yeah.
So my mana value in that, I don't change the mana value on my X spells like Walt does in a lot of his decks.
Yeah, you can on Moxfield you can edit the mana cost of a spell. So for me, I like to replicate my curve so that I know like kind of what it really is in my head. Pull from Tomorrow is tagged, I think, as 4 blue because I know I'm probably not going to cast it for less than 4. But you prefer to leave it without that.
I prefer specifically in an X-typal kind of build because it scales.
A lot of work.
It scales as well.
Sure.
Like I mean,
sometimes X is 30, sometimes X is 10, sometimes X is 5.
And I think it's not a good representation of the deck if I'm looking at the mana curve. But if I was to do like the minimum I would spend on each spell, I would argue that the deck's mana value is probably 4.5 to 5.
Yeah, it'd be high.
Yeah, it'd be ridiculously high. So I really want to be ramping on turn 2, again on turn 3, cast Zaxara on turn 4, and probably still ramp again on turn 4 with like another 2 mana thing.
I mean, we played with the Palms Off Gaming guys the other day down at their office, which was really fun, by the way. That was really
huge
cool.
Shout out. Jacob, Nick, Jack. That was really, really good time.
Really fun thing. We were all playing precons and James was on Zaxara because it's sort of was the closest deck you had, I think, around that time. And like you played a good game, but you probably only ramped maybe 2 times the whole game.
Yeah.
And when it got to turn, 7 or 8 and you only had, I think, 8 or 9 mana, the deck just didn't work as well. Whereas I think, was it literally yesterday? Yeah, yesterday when we played the Patreon game, you were more like in the realm of 15 to 20 mana.
Well, I won that
Cabal
game.
of Coffers, and you won the game.
And I broke my losing streak. Yay.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
I think like, a lot of the time people hear the things we say and they imagine them in a vacuum. Like I know when we spoke about reducing our mana curve and like the consistency of our card draw and stuff, someone said, I'm really sad to hear that I can't play big spells anymore. And it's like, that's not what we're saying. Like these things are all exist within context. And when me and James say we enjoy ourselves more by playing less ramp and playing at a lower mana curve with more consistency, that's all we're saying. It's more enjoyable for us to play in that way. But there's a relationship between all these parts of our decks, and you can have, and we do have, decks that have over 4 average mana value and 15 to 20 pieces of ramp in there, and that is a totally valid and fun way to be a bit of a Timmy in Commander games.
And it's not just like a one-off. My Zaxara deck is the one-off. My Phylaf deck is another huge mana value deck.
Definitely.
It's like it's totally a thing that you can approach with, and especially like as long as you take the principles of what we're saying and think about them in context of the deck you're building at the time. That's the important bit, because then you go, okay, well, is this a deck where I really want to reduce the curve? Or hang on, no, I'm playing Zaxara. I want a big spell. That's like the payoff of my commander, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure everything from 1 to 3 mana is ramp, and then everything up from there is going to either propel me to a game win or just win. Like, that's the plan.
Yeah. And look, like, there's a lot of fun to be had by being a Timmy in this way.
Yeah.
You know, having that huge curve and casting those huge spells. Like, you can support it in the deck that you build, as you say, and it's a lot of fun to do.
It is really fun.
We've got lots left to talk about, including many more ways for you to be like Timmy. But before that, I reckon we should have a thrifty interlude.
A thrifty interlude, just like Timmy's are the type of players to put a big spell on the stack. This isn't just like a little break. This is like, you know when they say have a break, have a Kit Kat? This is a Timmy's break. This is Timmy's going, I'm going to have a break. I'm going to have the whole block of chocolate just because I'm going all in. I'm just going to enjoy it. It's a whole Cadbury Dairy Milk block.
Or alternatively, it's one of those massive Kit Kats, the huge oversized ones.
Like the Toblerones that are like 6 foot long.
Yeah, it's that kind of chocolate break.
Screw it, all in. We're taking a break. You know what? We're just going to turn the podcast off now. Goodbye. That's how all in we're going.
It's a big break.
No, you can see that there's still like 20 to 30 minutes on the timeline left. Stick around.
Yeah, you know we're lying to you. We've got a little something to say about a thrifty card. As is tradition, I will be performing. This week, the card is brought to life in monologue form from the perspective of someone in the card. James, would you like to read the card we're featuring this week?
Oh, yeah. Now reading the name of the card, Phyrexian Ingester. I'm excited to hear what the monologue from the Phyrexian Ingester is. For 6 and a blue, you'll get a creature that's a Phyrexian Beast, a 3/3, and it has Imprint. So when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-token creature. Phyrexian Ingester gets +X/+Y, where X is the exiled card's power and Y is its toughness.
I nom you and then you in my tongue. And if you don't want to get nom in my tongue, then I want to nom you even more. You say, you want to go in the tongue? I want to nom you. You say, you don't care? I want to nom you. You say, you can't go nom in the tongue because you're allergic to the tongue. I still want to nom you. Everything you say make me want to nom you in the tongue. Unless you say you eat lots of carrots. Ugh! No carrots in the tongue. I see enough with my eyes already. I have nom many into my tongue, and after many years of this, they have little parties in my tongue. Only little parties, or I nom a goblin. Goblin in tongue makes party bad. Sometimes I resent my desire to nom. I wish my life could be more than nom. That perhaps my creator wished more for me than this. A larger purpose on this big stinky rock. I cannot nom the big stinky rock. Too big! One day, the big stinky rock nom me. And you? No, not you. I nom you first! Get positive!
Oh my god, that was not the voice I was expecting. I tell you what, the nom Phyrexian Ingester kind of sounds like.
Sure.
Kind of sounds like a drunk. You know The Godfather?
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like a
Marlon
drunk.
Brando.
Yeah, it's a, you come to me on my daughter's wedding. To nom me. Nom you first.
He's vaguely non-English, isn't he? Like he's
definitely
English is a
European.
second language.
It's European in some area. I'm not too
Western
sure where.
Italy, Greece, Turkey, somewhere.
One of the in the Baltics kind of area.
Somewhere around there. Thrifty Thursdays happens every week in our Discord server. You can check out the dedicated Thrifty Thursdays channel, play some games, or get some advice on your latest deck. It's linked in the show notes.
You know, I was actually considering this card for my Sally Sparrow deck.
Oh.
Because I could keep flickering it.
Because it stays gone. Like, it doesn't ever come back.
Once it imprints,
gone.
it exiles. So I was thinking about like a repeatable exile effect, but the mana value was a little bit much. I was like a little bit... It's still in my considering pile, so I might try it in the future.
It's borderline. It's just competing with effects like Duplicant. It's competing with effects like Meteor Golem gets a non-land permanent for the same mana value. And even then you can go lower and start looking at Anthem Mutineer, which gives them something.
But then you can encore it as well.
And it's only 4 mana value. So there's pros and cons. I used to play it in my Arami deck.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because I get the
Exile
attack
3
immediately.
And also the plus X plus Y then becomes really relevant.
Yeah, because it's in combat. Like, it's going to attack immediately.
Also, elephant in the room plus Y. What the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
Really bizarre.
Actually, let us know if you know of any other cards that say plus Y on them. Or just say Y on them.
Yeah.
I mean, can't think of almost
I've looked at a lot of cards and asked myself, why?
Why are you the way that you are?
Why are you the way that you are?
We should get back to being like Timmy. You gotta be like Timmy.
Timmy, Tammy, big curves. And now the next area that we're going to look at is the specific cards in those curves.
Yeah,
right?
big cards, I guess. The Space Commanders said we like, as a Timmy, magnificent single card effects.
Yeah.
I think it's worth being clear here that this is probably the biggest difference between Timmy/Tammy and Johnny/Jenny. Johnny and Jenny are focused on the interactions between cards, right? There's the classic Johnny combo player is like the thing. You know, I want to do this thing with this other card, and then with this other card, and this other card.
If you've ever seen me play Magic, that's probably me.
Very Johnny, definitely. Timmy kind of just wants one card that does it all.
Yeah.
And this is probably the biggest difference between Nick and Jenny, because Johnny and Jenny enjoy, you know, making big story things happen in a game, but they're more focused on the interactions between cards, whereas Timmy just wants that one card.
And Timmy wants it to be like the hero story, you know, like, wow, this one card came down, warped the entire game around it, and no one removed it. So fighting through it all, won that single card, won the game.
Yeah.
Might not be in that moment, but it might come down on like turn 6 and no one removes it. And on turn 8, 9, it ends the game.
Yeah, and they're often modal cards. They're cards that have a bunch of different utility. Or sometimes they're just like, cool, I win the game if you don't answer this.
Yeah, or like the blowout is just so huge for the opponent. It's like, yep, there's no way you guys are coming back to beat me now.
Yeah. We'll definitely go into some examples of big cards. But I had a thought that I wanted to talk about at the top of this.
Sure.
Which is, do you think we've been too negative about, quote, big cards?
Well, I will point out the hate we have given Atali in the past couple of episodes.
Well, Atali's kind of a classic Timmy card,
yeah,
right?
It's a big 6 mana, 6/6 beater.
But it has a big attack trigger. You get a bunch of effects right here, right now.
And really, left on its own, like the value that you can get from an Atali could win you the game on its own. Like, you know, it's one of those cards that left unanswered can just do the thing enough to win.
But so much of the time when we're talking about, I suppose lately a big theme on the podcast has been consistency. We've tended to say, look, these cards that only sometimes do something should probably be cut for the sake of cards that at a lower mana value do something right now.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Sometimes I worry that we've been too negative about these cards that sit at the top of your curve and do kind of just bring a game to an end on their own. You know, cards like Atali. I think personally, I'm actually starting to go back the other way as part of the reason I wanted to bring this up. I've started adding back in some curve toppers to the top of my decks. Like, you know, when I was building my Estra Damask deck, I initially, I looked at it one time and I was like, oh my god, like, there's one 7-drop, which was admittedly Nylea's Colossus, which is a great card. Absolutely love that card.
That's a game-winning card. It has won you many a game.
But there was kind of nothing else, like, in that sort of slot. I don't think there were any 6-drops. I think that was the only 7-drop. So besides those cards, there was nothing from above 5 on my mana curve. And that was a deck that admittedly was all about building a prison and stopping it. It's an Enchantress deck, for those who don't know. Green, white, blue Enchantress. Building up a big prison, no one can touch me, eventually I'll win. Sure. But it was taking so long to get there. And so it's like, I don't know, I almost wonder whether it felt like in that case of that deck that it needed something a bit higher to bring the game to an end. And I ended up putting in, because I pulled one in a pack, one with the multiverse.
Oh, that card is a Timmy card. If ever. I refer to this card as Omniscience Light. Same great taste, but half as good.
It's not Omniscience, but it's great fun. So this is the 8-mana enchantment that says you can look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play the top card of your library.
Yeah. And includes lands as well. You can play a land off the top. You can.
And once during each of your turns, you can cast a card from your hand or from the top of your library without paying its mana cost. So the floor of this is do things off the top of your deck whenever you want to, like play, you know, it does the reality chip style, play the top of your deck. And then, once a turn, you just get to drop the biggest thing. It drops your Nylea's Colossus directly onto the battlefield.
Yeah, basically anything that is in your 5 mana and up slot just goes drop.
Yeah.
And then you go, right, now I've got all of this mana available to me. I'll drop 3 more enchantments to back that up. So you drop Nylea's Colossus, then hard cast a, Rancor and a this and a that.
And then suddenly it's like, okay, my 4/4 Angel is now 50-50 in the air with Trample. I've found that by doing similar things to a few of my decks, they just have slightly more ability to just have eventual wins, right? It's like, if I just grind the game long enough, then just drop one with the multiverse, it's like, okay, I get there now.
I think the Timmys just love win conditions. They just love this, like, and they, because like Nylea's Colossus is like a curve topper, but one with the multiverse, like, is a kind of enabler to a win condition, right? Like,
it doesn't win the game on its own.
It doesn't win the game on its own, but it is a big mana spell that, if left unanswered, can give you enough value to get the win.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, big time.
I think that we might have been too hard on it. And you know what episode recently that we did that has made me reconsider these like big mana spells that, like Atali, we called it a big mana do nothing. Is the episode we had, I can't remember the name of the episode now, but about fun and maybe it was enjoyable moments, the episode 100.
Oh, memorable moments.
Memorable moments.
Yeah,
might have been episode 100. But just a couple of times recently, we've really focused on moments in Commander games that have been like, whoa, dude, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, it's either down to a really narrow answer or it's this like blowout card that people didn't see coming. And it's just like ended the game in a really cool way. I think that I really like explosive plays. Like, it just typically, I think I really like doing one big massive turn and like out of nowhere, all of a sudden, I'm kind of like the Stephen Bradbury of Commander games sometimes. Like, sometimes I'll be the first threat and I acknowledge that sometimes I'm too threatening too quickly. But a lot of the times I like sitting in that kind of pocket of like, wait for it.
Yeah,
Boom.
I think this is the way that you're a Timmy as well, is I think that you do the Johnny things. Like, the classic James play to me is the like, I tap this and untap this and tap this and untap this. I have 30 mana. Now I cast this big thing.
Yeah,
and
maybe that is,
That's like, I feel like your Johnny is like the way to get there, but often your big thing is a Timmy play.
Yeah, 100%. It's either like a whopping artifact in my Tornos deck that just like wins me the game, or it's like a huge X spell in Zaxara, or it's reanimating a huge threat with Scarab God after milling and War of Attrition kind of thing.
Or even Phylath, I've seen you like sack all your lands to Zuranorb and then Splendid Reclamation them all back. Like, that's a good feel. A real Timmy
That's a Timmy
feeling.
Play, yeah. But I think that like I've really been looking at cards that make those explosive plays, but have a really good value in the earlier parts of the game.
Sure.
And we actually mentioned it last episode in the monthly Meteor. The Offspring mechanic.
Oh, where you make a token copy of something by paying a bit of extra mana.
Yeah, so I really like cards that have this kind of thing of like, they're good in the early game, but if you draw them in the late game, can get exponentially better. So Offspring is a great mechanic to look at for this, because it's literally twice as good.
Yes.
You pay the extra cost, you get a whole nother body that enters the battlefield, does something, or has an ability on it, like whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 1 damage.
Yes.
Those cards from Bloomburrow were amazing. Multi-kicker is another really great thing to look at. Like, that gets scalably better with the game.
Yep.
X spells, Spree as a mechanic from Thunder Junction. That was a cool mechanic.
Yep.
Replicate. All of those kinds of basically different versions of kicker costs on cards. I'm really enjoying right now. Like, my inclusion of Final Showdown in my Sally Sparrow deck, which is the white instant speed board wipe that can give you protection. I love that card, not only because it's modal, because because it is modal, it's great. You can choose the right thing at the right time. But if you draw it early, it's a protection spell. It's just a really good protection spell for like my commander that comes down early, keep the engine going. Draw it late game, I'm like, I can win the game with this.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? I really like these spells that are kind of scaling with the game, that just get, like, if you get the game to turn 10, turn 12, and draw that card, it should just win.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so I can see the appeal. I think you're someone who really enjoys modality and having options, right?
Yes.
You like having lots of options with the things that you do. And so, yeah, you can kind of have your, quote, curve topper not always have to be a curve topper if it has.
It doesn't have to be
kicker.
just raw mana value.
Yeah,
it can be
a
like
3-drop that is sometimes a 7-drop, like your Final Showdown is a good
exactly
example.
right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Look, I think if you're someone who didn't really resonate with the big curves section of this episode, and you still want to play your consistent, your low mana value stuff, which is totally fair. You know, me and James probably sit mostly in that camp ourselves.
Yep, most of my decks are like that.
Yeah, I think still try to play at least one of these big, unstoppable monsters at the top of your curve. And I think it's important to say here, because we're going to go into some examples of these kinds of cards. It's not... People think of Timmy and they think of green, I think. And I get it. Like green,
I think of Gulter. I immediately think of Gulter, Primal Hunger, 12 trample, beat face. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, but I think, and I get it, that's definitely is Timmy. Absolutely, Gulter is a Timmy card.
Yeah.
But every color has access to an effect that feels Timmy in that color.
Yeah, I mean, it's designed like that because they're meant to be your draft bomb.
Yeah.
Like if the, most sets are built to be drafted, not all sets, that's a whole nother topic.
Yes.
But most sets are built to be drafted, and if you have a 6 mana, 7 mana spell in your opening pack, you're like, well, that's the card I'm going to play around. That's the card that's going to win me the game, because in those limited and sealed environments, that will win you the game.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, those cards in a Commander game can translate to pretty unstoppable threats.
Absolutely, they can. So I think we should just go into some examples. Let's just go Wurundjeri order.
Sure.
My favorite white bomb, and I put this in my Gandalf the White deck, and it does just end games. I know it's a bit of a meme, and it's in every precon, but I love Parhelion 2.
The Angel Pooper.
The Angel Pooper. This is the 8 mana. I'm not going to bring it up. I'm going to try and remember. It's an 8 mana vehicle, so it's not a creature on its own.
Yeah, 6 white, if I remember correctly.
It's definitely 6 white. I think it has crew 4.
Yep.
It becomes a 5/5 with flying, vigilance, and first strike, if I'm not mistaken. I think those are the 3 keywords.
Sounds right.
And when it attacks, you create 2 4/4 white angels with flying and vigilance that are attacking, not tapped and attacking. That are attacking.
It's kind of cracked that the angels come in with vigilance, attacking,
and don't tap when they come in attacking as well.
This, and also the angels crew it as well. If your creature gets killed, you still have 2 angels that are able to crew Parhelion.
And also, it literally lets you block, because Parhelion has vigilance. And so you make the 2 4/4s that are flying and vigilant themselves, get all the damage in or whatever. Someone goes to attack you, you just use one of those angels you just made, tap it, crew Parhelion 2,
and you've got a 5/5 first strike.
Flying first strike vigilance block
crazy
as well.
Yeah, this card has won me games. I used to have it in my Holland deck years and years ago. It was definitely a game-ending curve topper in that deck.
Yeah.
I think, interestingly, white is one of the colors that people struggle to think of their, especially mono white decks. I think they go, how do I close out the game?
And you end up seeing a lot of Approach of the Second Sun, which I find quite boring.
It is a bit boring.
Felidar Sovereign, in your upkeep, have a lot of life, win the game. A lot of the typical curve toppers in white are kind of boring. Obviously destroying all lands is a thing in other formats that is done a lot as a way to win the game in white.
But I would actually there's some other cards in white that I'm thinking of. Is it Dictate of Heliod, the flash enchantment, gives all creatures +2 and double strike or something?
+2/+2. Oh, I mean, there's True Conviction.
True Conviction is the one I'm thinking of.
6 mana enchantment that gives your creatures double strike and lifelink.
That's a great curve topper. If you're in a white weenies deck, that's another bit of a bomb that you can throw in at the top of your curve.
Totally. They exist. I think they're harder to find than in other decks, and sometimes they feel
harder
to
find in other colors.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of other colors are much easier to find this for sure. In blue, I mean, I've just said it, but I think one with the multiverse is a great example.
I was going to say that, or just
Omniscience.
Omniscience.
Yeah,
just plain and simple Omniscience. If you resolve Omniscience, you should win the game.
Yeah, this is the one that lets you cast spells for free from your hand.
Yeah. Can't do it from top of library, which, know, but it's as long as you've got a reasonably full grip, you were winning that game.
Or 1 card draw spell gets you there as well, right?
Sorted,
it absolutely will win you the game. And it feels Timmy to resolve, right? It's I can do anything I want, It's like the blue way of being Timmy.
Yeah, it's like I've broken the rules. Yeah. I win now. I've gotten so good at this, it's my game to
100%,
play now.
100%.
I think in black, the card that we've been seeing really frequently it's probably come up a lot in your cards at the crux.
In the game
your
log.
Game turning points in your game log. breach the multiverse?
I think we haven't revisited the stats in a while, but last time we spoke about the stats, this was a card that had appeared, I think, the most of any card.
It's really...
I think since then, if anything, it might just be first place by a long shot.
It's kind of crazy. Like, it's up there competing with board wipes, like, as like relevant cards that were cast in a game.
Yes.
If this resolves, can really shift the tide of a game.
So this is the 7-mana sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards. You return a creature card from each person's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. They don't have to be milled that way. I don't think.
That's something I might want to check. But
I might check that.
I think it might have to be milled in the 10.
Let's have a look.
If it doesn't, it just gets even better, right?
Yeah,
It's even stronger.
Even if they had to be milled, it's still a great card. Each player mills 10 cards. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card.
Oh, you can young planeswalkers? Didn't realize
that player's graveyard.
Oh, so it does not have to be milled. Wow, that's
the battlefield under your control. Then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types, because that's that big story moment from the Phyrexian invasion.
See, look, I look at this card and I'm like, I should be playing this in some of my decks.
Yeah.
Like, I really think I'm missing out on this card, because I am currently not running it in any of my decks.
Yeah, me neither.
And every time it has resolved in a game, I've been like, wow, this is a turning point of the game. Like, that player has gone from 0 to hero just from resolving this spell.
I mean, we both are super high on Incarnation Technique.
Big fan of Incarnation. Yep.
You know the one.
That one, yeah.
The 5-mana, this is the 5-mana black sorcery with Demonstrate, so you can get your opponent to do this, and then you do it twice if you do. You mill 5, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, do it again. So for 2 more mana, you get 4 things instead, and you get something from every opponent. Like, you don't get 2 of your things, I guess, which is a downside, and it costs 2 more mana. But still, 4/7, what you're getting
is the 3 best things from the top 10 of your opponents, or like more than your top 10, because it could be already in your graveyard. I just think this card is like probably one of the best commander cards. This is probably maybe a hot take. One of the best casual commander cards for the top of curves that has been printed in the last 2 years.
I think I'd agree.
I think it's genuinely something that I'm seeing a lot of people play with, and now I'm just thinking about it. I'm like going to purchase maybe 2 of them in our next card order.
Yeah.
Because I think that I just want to try it in maybe even in my Zaxara deck, even if it doesn't synergize, a deck that can support the mana value.
Yes.
Just throw this out. It could just win me the game.
Yeah.
It's not an X spell, but fuck, it might win.
Yeah. It'd be great in your Scarab God deck as well.
Oh, God. Milling everyone for 10 as well. That'd be great.
Then you've got more stuff to nick. Maybe that's the deck
or
that
even
it goes
Scorpion
in. God. You've got plenty of decks that could very easily support this.
Run a lot of black.
Yeah. He does love it. In red, I think you tend to end up with these huge dragons. I think probably a classic curve topper at the moment. I don't see a ton of it. I wish I saw more of it. Cavern Horde Dragon.
Oh, well, I mean, this weirdly, I think, is one of those red curve toppers that allows it, because it gets cheaper.
It gets cheaper for every artifact your opponent's
target opponent controls.
Is that right?
Yeah, okay. It only does it for one opponent, because this is like Dockside for casual. Because when it deals damage, you create treasures equal to the number of artifacts that player controls.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. So I've got it up here. It's technically 7 red, so it would be 9, but it's a 6/6 flyer with trample and haste. Crazy.
Yeah, haste is the big thing.
Yeah, that's correct. It costs X less, where X is the greatest number of artifacts and opponent control. So someone has 7 artifacts. It's red.
Yeah.
Usually maybe it's a 5-drop.
But do you see what I mean? Like, as a curve topper, it's kind of weird because you could cast this for nothing.
You can actually cast it for nothing. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token for each artifact that player controls. So it's a funnily enough a real. It's a dragon hoarding treasure. It's really good against your opponent's treasures specifically.
Yes. I think that this card is underplayed in casual, because I think that everyone secretly wants to play Dockside Extortionist in their red deck. I don't care who you are.
No,
you have thought about it once or twice. Now that Dockside's also available, like there's lots of printings of Dockside now, the price has come down. I think people are like, but everyone will see it and go, nah, you're just playing CDH. Yeah. And I don't want to be a part of that.
I feel like this is being mostly regulated by people like looking at it and going, I don't want to create that kind of a game where I can just explode into a lead on turn 5 or something.
But I would argue that this, in a casual game of Commander, could be a bigger turning point card than a Dockside Extortionist, because this has the capacity to make multiple treasures on multiple turns.
Yeah.
Like Dockside, unless you're flickering it or reanimating it, it's only doing it once.
Yes.
Whereas this, if it goes unanswered, you have just got a 7/7 with haste and flying and trample.
Crazy.
Like, that is going to be a big beater. And not only is it a beater, but it's doing the typical red thing of accelerating you really far into the lead with mana.
And also, it's on a dragon. You can't feel bad about that. Like, if you're swinging with a huge dragon and connecting with someone, and that's what makes all the treasures. It's also, by the way, pretty explicitly supposed to be Smaug. They couldn't use Smaug on a card because they didn't pay for the rights for the Hobbit. So there's a Smaug token from the Lord of the Rings set.
I don't know how they got around that. Like,
it's
with
so funny.
Getting a token called Smaug, but Cavern Horde Dragon can't be.
It's so funny.
It also should be legendary. I think this as a commander would be fucking wild.
Oh, man. You'd probably play Group Hug, wouldn't you? Because
you'd just make people treasures. Yeah, you would want to give everyone as much treasure as possible. And then you would be able to play... God, this would be a great commander.
This would be a great descent into Avernus deck.
Oh,
that would be super good and
crazy.
Fun.
Making everyone 2 treasures +2 every single turn. Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool.
Definitely. In green, for these curve toppers, I feel like you end up... Green has a lot of these. Like the classic thing we were talking about, cards that do everything. Primeval Bounty.
One of our friends, Abe, resolved this in a game, and we were just like, yeah, it's a big, dumb curve topper that doesn't really do much. Oh, we didn't answer it for 3 turns? We're dead now? Yeah. Cool, that's fun.
It's just how it does it. It's crazy. Like, it's an enchantment, I think people were really onto it when it got printed and then completely fell off the radar because it's a mythic, but it's still about $1. It's a 6 for 5 and a green. You get an enchantment that says, whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 3/3 beast token. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put 3+1 counters on a creature you control, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life.
That is an insane amount of value stapled to a card. I know it's like one of those things that we always say, like it's a 6 mana, do nothing. Like it does enter the battlefield and do nothing.
You need to do other things after it before anything happens. It's like a Tali. It's a lot like a Tali in that way.
It is like a Tali. It enters, does nothing, but if it just sticks around for even a turn, if you are casting a 6 mana spell and then untapping with Primeval Bounty on board and you've got 6 minimum mana, just having 6 mana is enough to like trigger this enough times for it to be worth the 6 mana.
It triggers on anything, right? Like you could put this in a landfall deck as a way to gain a shitload of life. You could put this in a deck that cares about +1 counters because it's a way to put lots of +1 counters in your deck. You can put this in a token deck because it makes a 3/3 beast every time you cast a creature spell. Like, no matter what deck you're playing, this will do something. I think if you're doing any one of the 3 things it wants to do, like, and that's part of your strategy.
And it's like you're frequently doing that.
Yeah, so if you are a lands deck or if you are a token deck, it gets better for sure. But even if it's not, like, there's no mode on this that's bad. No matter what you do, something happens.
And I think if you're doing 2 of them or all 3 of those modes, you are absolutely loving life.
It's like cowboy magic.
Yeah, you might end up, having enough mana because, like, if you're land ramping, like in a landfall deck, you probably have maybe 12 mana on turn 8.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, slam this 6-drop. Now cast a huge ramp spell that gets me a bunch of lands ETB, gain 14 life. Like,
it's silly. It's an absolutely silly card.
Craziness. Well, look, I think we should also shout out Colorless because Colorless
does not get enough love these days.
No, there's just not enough Eldrazi's roaming around the local game stores nowadays, is there?
We see a lot of them. I hope that the craze... It's fine. Eldrazi, I understand, are fine, especially for Timmys.
Yes, that's true.
But I'd be happy to see slightly less than we do right now. I suppose Ululek was still only printed a little while ago.
I think we're probably not going to see the Eldrazi for a long time now. No. Like, we've revisited them, and I think they'll be in bed for a while. They'll be in hibernation. Eldrazi winter hibernation.
They're back in the moon. Yeah. Moon's got to come back around, and then we'll see them
They're just coming out. But look, as a curve topper in Eldrazi decks, or just colorless decks, Eldrazi Conscription.
Oh, God.
This card is cracked.
Yeah.
8 mana. It's a typal enchantment, which is the Eldrazi type. Aura, so you enchant a creature and it gets +10/+10, trample, and Annihilator 2.
Silly. Absolutely silly.
Absolutely bonkers. Like, look, you could feasibly throw this literally in any deck and it would be good because you've got a commander, right?
Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, your commander is probably a creature that you could swing with, and if it had +10/+10 and Annihilator 2, you've probably just put someone on a 2-turn clock.
It's true.
Like, this card is just one of those cards that I think doesn't see a lot of play because people feel like it's just like, a weird include in decks that don't synergize with it, or it's like it's meant to be in an Eldrazi deck, so it will be a Vorthos thing later.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, this is colorless. You could throw this in anything, and it's just an 8-mana topper. If you've got a good attack, or if your deck wants to attack, or like I'm just thinking about this in like Ishin. Annihilator 2.
Oh, God. You double the Annihilator 2 trigger.
Absolutely bonkers. Like, ridiculously powerful.
I think it's like that classic thing, right? If any of this text can be improved by you. So, like, it's an aura. If you're a deck that makes auras cheaper.
Or an Enchantress deck.
Or a deck that cheats auras out.
Yeah,
or, my thought, it admittedly doesn't synergize great because you don't get the Annihilator multiple times. But, like, if you're a Stang deck. The green-red thing.
Oh, that copies the
auras every time it attacks.
Oh, I like
suddenly
that.
all your Stangs are absolutely massive.
Oh, what's that, the Mardu enchanter thing where like you sacrifice an enchantment, return one from the graveyard?
From way back. Gosh, I know who you're talking about.
I know it's Mardu.
It's totally Mardu. It's from
Commander Masters, right?
Commander Legends.
Oh, Commander Legends,
way back.
Yes. Oh, yeah, this card is really old. The original Commander Legends.
I'm gonna pull it up. But it's an absolute... You basically sacrifice an enchantment...
And
I'm
return
not
one
going to
from
pull it up.
graveyard.
We know what it does. You sacrifice an enchantment and you bring another enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield. You basically swap them.
Yeah, that would be a great include in this deck.
Awesome. Would be super, super fun.
Super cool.
Yeah. You can find a curved topper in any color, and like I think play at least one. Just put one stupid, fat, doesn't do anything except win the game.
And honestly,
in your deck.
I genuinely think a one-off, like if you're following all of our other deck building principles and like, thinking about your curve and all this kind of stuff, a one-off, I genuinely think this is something Walt and I are learning about as well as we go. One-off of these things win you games.
Yeah.
Like, they really close out games and get you over the line.
Yeah.
And that's like, because sometimes you got all of this low mana stuff that's like really synergistic and doing all this stuff, but it's like, it's not got the raw oomph to get you over the line.
Yeah, big time. I think we should move into that third category, which Space Commanders mentioned. I'm going to call this big fun.
Big fun.
Big fun. The Space Commander said...
We're going to a carnival now.
Yeah,
big fun.
The clowns are here. That's not fun for some people. The Space Commanders said that Timmys make decisions dictated by fun. Yeah. So in other words, it's not that they're like only prioritizing fun, but it's like it's being dictated by the fun. I think in the same way that last category was a big difference between Johnny's and Timmy's.
Oh, I see where you're going with it. This is
the difference between Timmy and Spike, I think, where Spikes theoretically only make choices that lead them to winning a game, but Timmy's will sometimes make a decision because it's more fun, either for themselves or for the whole table.
You'll often hear Timmy's mutter to themselves, should I do the right thing or should I do the fun thing?
Yeah.
And I think you say that a lot because
I do.
I know that you have an inner Spike. Like you are very much somewhere deep down. I think ages ago, maybe a year ago, we did an episode on Playstyles.
It might have been 2 years ago. Yeah. Playstyles was episode 5.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
If I'm not mistaken.
And in that episode, we actually found out that Walt really is a Spike.
Yeah.
Deep down, he is a Spike. He is the type of guy that analyzes the mana curves in his decks obsessively, tinkers with it, makes plays, and really thinks about what is the most value and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But I think the Timmy in you competes with that Spike the most when you have a big dumb fun card and the objectively correct thing. Yeah. That's where you get that like internal pull of like, oh, should I do the right thing or the dumb thing, the fun thing?
I think it's a real gut feeling thing. Like sometimes it's really obvious in your hand, but a lot of the time when you're looking at your hand, you just need to consider like some of these things that can be more fun. And when I say can be more fun, there's sort of categories of cards when you look at them in your hand that could produce a more fun outcome than the objectively right thing. So there's kind of 3 examples I think that come immediately to mind for me.
Sure.
The first is like cards that just introduce a fun element to the entire game. Certainly I'm thinking of all of our group hug cards we highlighted in the recent group hug episode.
I think that really adds a good little zest.
Yeah, Descend into Avernus. Give people more mana, get the life totals down. Share the spoils, give people access to each other's cards.
Yeah, Fletcher's favorite card, our Space Commander Fletcher.
But even cards like the Monarch or like Coveted Jewel, cards that sort of add a new resource to be competed over in the game, I think always tend to increase the fun.
Even just like a card like, like those kind of looking probably not at Timmy's area now, but like Humble Defector, just like an extra bit of card draw, something like that. It just kind of like really gives the table something to do that's not thinking about their own strategy.
Yeah.
And I think that if anything, brings the players at the table together a little bit more.
Yeah.
It makes it more of a game, more of like an enjoyable thing instead of like this competition, which I think so often of the time when we sit down at a Commander table, we forget that we are sitting down. Commander is a casual format. We are genuinely there to have fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think all of us forget and we're like so focused because we just edited this deck last night and we're trying to make sure it functions correctly, or we're trying to get our win percentage up because we've got a game log that we're keeping now and stuff like that. I think that, Timmys are so good at this, and cards like Monarch, cards like even the Initiative, I know it's one tricky to keep track of, but it's like it just adds a whole new dimension to the game that increases other people's fun as well as theirs. Yeah.
Well, and I think, you mentioned Humble Defector, cards like Scheming Symmetry, cards like Wishclaw Talisman that let you choose something and then someone else gets to choose something as well. I think this actually leads me neatly to another category of card, which is like cards or plays that create political opportunities. So we spoke at length about Prisoner's Dilemma when we spoke about our favorite plays just the other day. But I think, this is a classic example of a card that forces people to strategize with one another in a political way.
Yes, it like puts a thing on the game of like, okay, now we're playing this together. You're not just like playing your own strategy. It's like a Prisoner's Dilemma. It's like there are rulings of that card on the Gatherer webpage that are like, players are allowed to discuss and lie prior to this card resolving. Like there is a rule in the game that says you should do this. Like this is part of what this makes the fun game. Yeah.
I think there's demonstrate cards. We already mentioned Incarnation Technique in this episode, but they create a really unique politicking opportunity. I love Healing Technique is the green one where you regrow something, you get it back from your graveyard to your hand, and you gain life equal to its mana value.
Oh, so you get two things.
You get two things when you demonstrate it. It does exile and resolution because they don't like you looping these things anymore. But yeah, you can get, someone's on a low life total. You can go, hey, you could bring back your Cavern Horde Dragon.
And gain
9 life.
9 life, there you go.
It creates an opportunity for a fun, situation to unfold there, I think, in the political sphere. Like, I think this is not something people immediately think of Timmys as being about, but Timmys really prioritize fun. And, it's like Mark Rosewater said, it's the visceral experience of playing. And I think...
And almost extending the game by giving these group hug cards out. Like, giving resources to your opponents makes the game more of a game. Like, if you're playing a game and you are clearly in the lead and you win from the get-go. Like, I'm thinking about our experience recently with your Marchesa deck, right?
Sure.
No, sorry, not Marchesa, Seguin, the other Mardu deck.
Yes.
You just had like a turn 1 Soul Ring, you had the gas hand, you were winning from the start, you killed us all, and it was like over by turn 6 or something like that.
Yeah, 6 or 7,
It was really early in the game.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of fun in that game.
Sure.
You didn't have the best time in that game.
It was fine.
It was fine, but like that game was missing something, and what it was missing was other opportunities for other players, not just Walt.
Yes.
Because we were constantly fighting against you, trying to like find how do we take you down.
Yeah.
Whereas, these cards like Scheming Symmetry, like Incantation Technique, like Prisoner's Dilemma, they really give the players at the table an opportunity to be a part of that game.
Yeah. And look, I think it's funny, like you mentioned the Seguin deck, because Seguin, I think the way that it unfolds is very Timmy, right? I stood up all the things, they're really big, I attack, I win. But yeah, I think, when Mark Rosewater's saying it's about the visceral experience of playing, I think when it comes to Commander, the visceral experience of playing is the social aspect of Commander, right? Like,
it's sitting down with your playgroup.
Yeah, and so I agree. I think that there are the Timmy ways, there's Timmy plays in terms of this creature's really big, rah, I'm going to get you. That's still Timmy, but Timmy's also about, I want the whole table to be enjoying this. I want to create a memorable moment. And that's where the politics, I think, comes into it.
Timmy's are all about episode 100, which is memorable moments.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
Like their whole deal. I think that something else in terms of like big fun for me playing against you is cards that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
That's something that when Timmy's play a card that you're like, what the fuck is this? Is like such a fun experience. Like the card that I'm thinking of specifically is Dance with Calamity in your Wizards deck. The first time you cast that against me, I was like,
What?
And then I saw it and I was like, oh, this is fun. Like, this is something I would never consider, because I would have read it and gone, nah, it's not as synergistic, or it's not as streamlined, or it's not guaranteed. That's the big thing about that card.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would have just passed it off. But like, just seeing it cast at the table created this whole thing of like, everyone was leaning in watching Walt, because Dance with Calamity, it's a weird card. You basically play blackjack with yourself.
Yeah, you shuffle your library, you exile the top card any number of times, and then if the total result of the mana values of those things is 13 or less, you cast any number of them without paying their mana cost.
So if you
That's the end of the text. So if you go more than 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever,
you have just exiled
nothing
cards.
happens. You just exiled some stuff.
So you exile one card, you get a 3-drop, and you go, okay, I'm at 3. You exile another one, you get a 5-drop. You're like, oh, I'm at 8 now. What's the likelihood I get a 4-drop to still go underneath that? What's the likelihood of hitting above?
Oh no, it's Eldrazi Conscription.
Definitely bust. But like, that kind of thing, it's not just so fun for the Timmy that's casting it. It's kind of fun for the whole table, because they get to go, wow, what is that card? I've never seen that before in my life.
I really try to make a habit of, when I see a new card, I try to resolve it. I mean, I'm always interested in testing my decks. This is my inner tinkerer and stuff. But from a Timmy perspective, I think, especially in Commander these days, there's so many cards designed for Commander and just designed for Magic in general. There's just so many opportunities for people to go, whoa, what the hell's going on right here? And I think, like, there's exceptions. Some people are not going to love to see these kinds of things happen. I think most of us are happy to see something goofy and new and weird happen, assuming it doesn't take forever to resolve. And I think Dance with Calamity is a pretty good one, where it's like, it is complex, but not so complex that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got another big spell that I've just recently included in my Zaxara deck. It's an X spell.
Yeah.
It's Profane Command, X black. I nearly had you dead to rights with this in our
you
game.
could have killed me, and then you decided not to, because you would have lost to everybody else.
So I didn't do the Timmy thing.
Sure.
But this card is just X, and it's got like a bunch of different modes. It's choose 2. Target player loses X life. Return target creature card with mana value X or less from graveyard to the battlefield. Target creature gets neg X until end of turn, or up to X target creatures gain fear until end of turn.
Whoa,
and
fear?
That last one is the reason why I put it in the deck, because I was like, if I just have a big enough board and give all of my Hydra's fear.
So for those who may not know, Intimidate is the similar mechanic. Intimidate gives creatures they can't be blocked except by a creature that shares a color with this creature or artifact creatures. Fear is just straight up black.
Or artifact.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. But yeah, it's like Intimidate, but specifically black. So yeah, your 10/10 Hydra can't be blocked except like black creatures or artifact creatures. There's a good chunk of the time where nobody has a black creature or an artifact creature, and it will get through. Or that someone's got one server, and it's like, cool, you can block one of them. The other 10/10s are coming at you.
Yeah, but like Profane Command, if you weren't playing Lorwyn, you probably might not have seen that card before. Like
it's not one that immediately springs to mind.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, and especially because it does so much, and you choose 2 of them. So you have 4 options, you get 2 of them. Yeah. Everyone is like, why is there so much text on this card?
Big time. I think when you're looking down at your hand and you're trying to think about, this big fun thing from Timmy's, cards introduce a fun element to the entire game that create political opportunities or that you've never seen before. They add a new spicy element to the game, and that's what Timmy's are all about.
And people go, wow, you're really cool.
Yeah.
Being a Timmy is a cool thing to be.
100%. Look, in a format increasingly focused on optimizing, it can be hard to instead find room for high mana curves, big splashy cards, and a mentality of fun for everyone. That said, Timmys may just have the most fun, and the rest of us could afford to think like a Timmy and act like a Timmy once in a while to have some better games of Commander. So, Space Commanders, command received!
Nice. Cool. I'm going to go and swing a dinosaur at someone now.
Yeah, Galta. To listeners, do you feel commanded? What cards in Magic make you feel like a Timmy power gamer?
Yeah, tell us on all the social media platforms. We're at Get Commanded on all of them. Or tell us live in our Twitch chat. That's really the best place to talk to Walt and I directly.
Yes.
Is when we're literally staring at a screen that has your chats coming up in front of us. Twitch.tv/Get Commanded. We go live every Monday night at 7 7 p.m. Melbourne time. And you can always watch those later on YouTube as well.
Yeah, big time. And don't forget to check out our Patreon page. This is the reason that this command came to us. It was from Wizard Down Under, who's our Space Commander supporter. So if you'd like to suggest the episode topic to us or get any of those other perks, you can check it out. It's linked in the show notes.
Including the monthly meteor.
Yes, like we mentioned. So we'd like to thank our patrons, Fuzzy, Bottomless Potamus, Dire, Dylan Norg, Bertie, Crazy Logic, and Benjamin. And an extra special shout out to Fletcher Cutting and Wizard Down Under, who support us in the Space Commander tier. You're the best.
You are the best. And thanks, Wizard, for the episode request.
Yeah, big time.
I actually think we'll revisit this in a little
series. Maybe,
possibly. And thanks to Palms Off Gaming, of course, for hosting us for a Commander Night on Friday.
Yes, and other things.
And also sponsoring our podcast. We were playing in the office, so we just were surrounded by like prototype products of POG and like all this kind of stuff that we're sworn to secrecy and cannot tell you anything. But it's all great stuff, and you should check out.
Cool stuff coming, for sure.
Yeah, cool stuff coming, but cool stuff on their website now. So go check it out. palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanders. I have heard that they have a lot of 4-pocket binders available. And also their sick wind sheeters, which I am going to pick one up in a couple of days.
Cool.
Because I was already messaging Jacob and I was like, yeah, I'd like one. And he's like, just take one. I was like, yeah, sweet.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, if you'd like to look cool like me in one of those POG wind sheeters, go to palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanded, 10% off, and you support the show at the same time.
Yep. There's some really great stuff over there. And yeah, it's always cool to go visit them and see what they're up to. They're a bunch of really cool guys. And they're local here in Melbourne. So
and they play Commander now.
They do play Commander now. Possibilities opening up in front of us.
Yes, we were genuinely sat with them like, oh, this could be a big thing.
It's the start of something new. Okay, no more of that. We should planeswalk.
Yes.
Out of Magic, outside of Commander. James, it's your turn. Where are we planeswalking to?
Well, we're planeswalking to my living room where there is a cage with 2 tiny rat babies in it.
Pet rats.
For those
Beef, taco.
Yeah, Beef and Taco. My partner and I just recently adopted 2 little rats called Beef and Taco. They're only about 6.5 months old, so they're still like quite young. They're pretty big for their like age.
Probably
which is,
fully grown, I would guess, for a rat. Roughly?
They usually say about 9 to 12 months is when they hit.
Wow, so they'll get bigger again?
They might get a little bit bigger.
Sure.
We're also very generous with our feeding portions, so they might get a bit chunkier.
Beef in particular is
definitely
a less active dude.
Definitely very similar to Phyrexian Ingester. A bit of an nom. But yeah, Beef and Taco, I never thought I would own rats. I always thought rats were a strange pet because you have to keep them in a cage and all this kind of stuff. But I've learned that rats are just tiny, tiny little dogs, basically. And we let them free roam around the living room. Like, we'll corner off some areas and close doors.
So they can't get smushed and stuff.
Yeah, because Beef really loves under the couch.
Sure.
And I get anxious when he's under the couch because I'm like, I can't see where you are. And I'm like a little concerned. So I've shoved like doonas and like stuff around the couch to like keep him out. But they are so cute. I really, really recommend if you are someone that maybe can't take care of a dog the way a dog would need to be taken care of, like taking on walks and that kind of stuff. Maybe if you've got mobility issues.
Yeah.
A rat is a really cute alternate pet that is very easy to take care of and also very cheap as well. They are tiny, so they don't eat a lot.
No.
They don't eat heaps. And also, you can feed them veggies. Like, that is a great
kind of
part of their
what
diet.
they eat, roughly, right? I think we have got such, I mean, understandably, there are areas of the world, including Australia, where rats are a pest.
Yes, they're like vermin, I guess, is the term that you would probably associate in your head with a rat.
Yeah, but once you meet them and interact with rats for the first time, I think you realize that, they're just another little mammal, and dogs and other cats, little mammals that we enjoy keeping in our lives, even birds.
And they have personalities. Like Taco has epilepsy. Taco has seizures, and it would help if she wasn't such a energetic little ball of like fury that is just kept within her. She just runs around. She's very playful. She's always like bouncing off things, climbing up on the platforms within the cage. And then Beef is very chill, like super calm. So they're like very different people, like, little people in a house. So like Beef will cuddle with you and like sit kind of in the hood of your hoodie or sit in the pocket, and they're genuinely so cute. I never thought I would be a rat person to own. having them for like genuinely a fortnight has changed my whole outlook on these little mammals. They're so adorable.
I hope we can see Beef or Taco maybe appear on stream at a future stream.
We
That'd be
did
nice.
have them pop up on stream the other week.
We did too, didn't we?
I've not posted that one on YouTube yet, but
we should.
Yeah,
We should have another visit, I think, from Beef or Taco.
that is
they're so
very
cute.
easy to arrange.
Well, that's all we have time for. We'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commanders.
Goodbye, Commander players.